We have been talking about Greece, the EU, and the anti-austerity movement going on in Greece right now. Now, for more insight into the issue, we are joined by Mario Seccareccia. Mario, thanks very much for joining us. He is the professor of economics at the University of Ottawa. Interesting the way this meeting kind of got off today. Basically, Mr. Tsipras came in and said, well, here's my thoughts on this. We are not going to basically go along with what had been discussed for such a long time in terms of continuing to get bailouts. What is the tone? How do they move forward from here?
Well, I think it's one of these games of chess or maybe even poker, where the Greeks have the wild card, perhaps. But if you look at it in terms of the stress and strains that it could cause in the financial market, merely the prolongation of this whole agonizing process going on, you have to understand that most of this Greek sovereign debt is held by public institutions, like for instance, the European Commission, countries in the European Commission, para-public like the European Central Bank, and also the IMF, internationally. So these, in that regard, are not facing the same stress and strains that you would find in the financial markets if it was held by banking institutions or by individuals. So in that regard, I think what we're dealing with is a situation where the pressure is going to be politically rather than on the financial side, I would argue.
Can you just expand on that? You say the pressure is going to be on the political side. What do you mean exactly by that? And just the way that they've gotten off with the discussions with Germany as well, basically saying not only are we not going to go along with what we discussed in the past, but we also believe you owe us billions in war reparations from 71 years ago.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, no, they're playing a hardball there, but at the same time, you have to understand that politically, Germany faces a big problem within its own constituent. They're the ones who are the most committed to austerity measures in Europe.
Right.
But at the same time, they have to face with the fact that part of the reason why these countries are in such a difficult position has to do with the way in which they're running these trade surpluses across these countries. So part of the problem has to do with the way they themselves have been implementing austerity more rigorously, so to speak, than these other countries, and the outcome of that has been what has happened over the last few years. So in a sense, they're also the culprit, and it's more difficult in that situation to be able to defend that.
Well, let's talk about what
except with his own constituents. Sorry. Yeah.
Let's talk about what Spain, Portugal, and Ireland are doing right now, because they've watched how this unfolds and basically saying, look, we don't want continued bailouts. We want to go our own way. We want to be able to sell our bonds. What do these other countries think about that?
Well, I think they're facing a very interesting, situation out there, because, as you could imagine, the standoff, between Greece and Germany really is being looked very carefully, especially by a number of people in Spain. There might be the next, Greece, so to speak, and there's a lot of popular pressure to go the same route, because what they've seen essentially is that these austerity policies, which is a huge sacrifice for the the common citizen especially, is not really bringing the fruits, and that they were supposed to ultimately solve, for these countries. They're not delivering on that. And in that regard, what is happening right now, of course, is that there's more and more buildup of political pressure against these austerity measures, which means, of course, that if Greece, whatever will happen in Greece, could be very, very easily emulated in these other countries.
Well, let's talk about what this could do to the global economic conditions as well, because you have Greece coming in and saying, look, we are completely unapologetic. We also want to rehire the 10,000 state workers who were laid off. How do you see Greece moving forward in any positive way? Do you see any quick or any positive outcome to what's going on right now?
Well, I don't see any quick or positive outcome, although they have no interest in prolonging this whole thing, in a sense, But I don't see it it's going to happen anytime soon. On the one hand, as you know, there is a financing gap, which already by the end of this month they have to meet. There are different estimates of that. One of the estimates is in the range of something like 12.5 billion euros. That's on the assumption that they would have gone on and engaged engage in the kind of austerity measures that they had initially committed themselves to during the last bailout. And obviously that's not going to happen, which means that they're going to be facing a much, much bigger financing gap if the Greek government pursues its anti-austerity measures, meaning that they're going to start spending somewhat again, reducing what is currently a fairly significant primary surplus. They will still probably be running what we call a primary surplus, that is to say, when we abstract from their interest payments on the public debt. But still, you know, even if they were to, let's say, continue with a lower one, there are all kinds of estimates, some of them as high as in the range of 40 billion euros and all that. Now, how are they going to how are they going to get that out of the rabbit? It won't be easy. And I think this is really the bottom line, which is that they may well default, which is the kind of wild card that they have.
Okay,
and then we'll see what could happen from that.
Mario, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate your insights, Professor of Economics at the University of Ottawa.